Hello, and welcome back to the Stellar Homes podcast. We are so happy you've tuned in today because we are talking about a subject that most consumers really don't know the details about. But wow, it can make or break a real estate deal. And that is real estate home appraisals. Hello again. I'm your host, Stella Harris. As we like to remind our audience, especially those that are newly tuning in, please hit the subscribe button to learn more insider details about all things real estate, such as home appraisal. So, whether you're buying, selling, or refinancing, the appraisal can feel like a mysterious process that holds the keys to your financial future and your home happiness. Today, I am joined by appraisal expert Bilal Shareef, who has years of experience helping homeowners, buyers, and even banks understand property values. We are going to pull back the curtain on how appraisals work, what you need to know, and how you can prepare. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. So let's get into it. Bilal, welcome to the Stellar Homes podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We are so happy to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. So, Bilal, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, Bilal Shareef, the west side of Atlanta, Grady baby.
And Grady Baby,
Sure
okay,
did, sure
an
did.
original.
Oh yeah, OG original. I call myself a young OG, But yeah, Mays High School, really adamant about, development, on the west, but from Atlanta, but the earth is my turf. So, I actually have teams nationwide and even colleagues doing things international. So I literally know I wanted to do real estate since I was in about sixth grade because of a mentor, my band director that started me off in third grade. And fast forward, by the time I graduated high school, he was buying and selling 20 houses a month with cash. I built my system to complement his system, became an investor myself, started to the point where got to the point where I had almost 20 properties myself in my ownership or control. Market went down. That's when I actually got licensed as a real estate agent and got affiliated with the Empire Board of Realtors that I eventually became president of, and start doing a lot in the philanthropic space and nonprofits, and became a broker. And from being a broker, started to doing housing counseling. So like I said, I wear a lot of hats, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. And that's why we have you here, because the audience will notice there are two titles for you. You wear a lot of hats, but we're focusing on two titles that we have here for you today.
Absolutely.
So tell us what those titles are and then explain what you do with those titles.
Oh yeah. Well, the first one, board of trustee of the Appraisal Foundation. The Appraisal Foundation is a national foundation based out of DC. It is authorized by Congress as a source of appraisal standards and appraisal qualifications. And I was actually appointed as a trustee for 2025. I have a 4-year term. It was a very rigorous process, selection process. It was over 80 candidates for the one position that I, actually got. And I'm the youngest African American to ever serve on the board of trustees, almost 4-year organization. So that's the first title. The second title is broker owner of Advanced Realty Concepts. And so upon Advanced Realty Concepts, we do consulting investments, development, and property management. And our ancillary company, ARC Partners Global, powered by EXP, is when I run my nationwide sales team of 70 plus agents in different states, have presence in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, Vegas, Atlanta, Northwest Georgia.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So let's focus on the appraisal side of what you do. Not that you're an appraiser, but you're on the board of trustees. And wow, amazing, you know, to be so young and to be on the board of trustees of such a prestigious, organization. So tell us a little bit more about appraisals because most of our consumers, our audience, they've heard the word appraisal and maybe they've had an appraisal done, but the actual details and what goes into an appraisal, the process and what, appraisers are thinking and things of that nature. There's more that I would like our audience to learn more about appraisals. So please.
Yeah, so an appraisal is an unbiased opinion of value done by a qualified professional. When they go out to the home, they're looking for things, not only the square footage, they're looking at the condition of the home. They're comparing market conditions to the previous, maybe 6-month market conditions to say whether you're dealing with a stable market, an increasing market, or a declining market. And all these things come into play when they're looking at the home. And it's very important because depending on the appraisal, can really determine if a home is actually worth what you're looking to buy it for.
Right.
And if it's not, then the buyer would either have to come up to exceed that appraised value with additional money out their pocket,
Right.
or the seller can lower the property down to the appraised value.
Appraisals really matter because they can actually make or break a deal. And I've seen it happen, unfortunately. And that's where pricing right from the beginning really helps. Like you said, if there's an appraisal gap, right? Someone has to come up and make up for that gap.
You'll be surprised how many times, even with dealing with the appraisals, how many, discrepancies and things that come about because sometimes the seller just can't reduce the price or the buyer can't come up with additional money. So there are different things that can be done, as it comes to, as it relates to challenging or rebuttaling an appraisal as well.
And here's, I'm sure, what our audience would love to know. So, walk us through the process. When you walk into a home or an appraiser walks into a home, what are they looking for?
When an appraiser walks into the home, well, first, before they even get to a home, they've done a lot of market research, pulled up some potential comparable homes, typically 3 or 4 homes that are listed for sale, 3 or 4 homes that have sold within the 6 month period. Of course, the more recent the sale or the closer in proximity the other comps are to the sale, the more weight that they typically will put on the um, comparable sale when they're doing their adjustments. But typically when they walk up to into the home, they're looking at everything. They're looking at the condition of the home, the landscape and the curb appeal. They want to know the age of the roof. They want to know the age of your mechanicals, which are your electrical, your HVAC, your plumbing, things of that nature. And the things that really help drive the value is if a person has done recent renovations, if they have a new kitchen, if they have a new bathroom, things of that. So they're looking at all those things. They're comparing it based off the square feet, or the square footage of the home. And typically the homes that they're comparing it to, they're staying roughly about 20 to 25% above or below the square footage of the subject home, which is the home that they're going to appraise.
So it sounds like they're looking at the nuts and bolts of the home. Um, for instance, paint color does not matter. Neutrals versus pink. I'm just making, light of that using paint as an example, but they're looking for, like you said, newly if it how it's renovated, not just renovated, but renovated correctly.
Well, color typically don't matter, but I mean, you might not want your client to have that hot pink. They might just
Exactly.
some unconscious undervaluing going on in their head. So you may want to make a recommendation of a more neutral color.
Exactly. Unconscious. I like the way you put that. Undervaluing the home. Exactly. So, how long does the typical appraisal take?
An appraisal takes, and once again, like, I'm on the board of trustees. I'm a valuation expert.
Right.
I'm not an appraisal, but I've been an authority in the valuation space for more than, almost 15 plus years,
Exactly.
and I've been successful when I've had to, kind of even challenge or help to influence, a rebuttal or change of value with appraisals. I've literally had to, get that done numerous times. And 90% of the time, I've got them to change the value, in favor of what, I was thinking based off giving other information. But typically,
That's great, actually, that you mentioned that because I've had to rebut an appraisal for right for a client of mine as well. I may not, we just have to always make sure we're fighting for our clients as much as we can, as hard as we can, and when that appraisal comes back, what you're not expecting, if you think it's undervalued. Um, what is the best way to approach that with the appraiser who made that appraisal? And what significant items, line items, are best to rebut?
well, there's a lot of things that you can do. And I have a robust amount of experience dealing with valuation from a BPO standpoint, and that just broke a price opinion.
Okay.
Actually, when I first got licensed, I went with a team that were listing and selling properties for the banks, the REO properties, and I helped them expand their REO operation. And all I did for the first couple months was just stay there day and night doing valuations, doing numbers. So a lot of times you have to stay abreast of the changes that are happening within the appraisal industry to know which angle to kind of best go at to kind of rebuttal it. With that being said, some of the major issues or areas that I've seen that you can go at is if they are using a comparable that may have been a distressed property and you have more similar or homes that aren't distressed properties. If your subject home, which is the home that you're looking at, is not in distressed condition. So that condition adjustment is a major adjustment if they're comparing your home to one that was totally distressed or a distressed sale. Back in 2009, 10 is when they start allowing appraisers to utilize distressed properties. And some of them went overboard because before that you couldn't even utilize it. I give you a case in point of an example once. So I was working with a developer, and this developer picked up for distressed properties, put a lot of renovation into the home, and we sold the homes back to first-time home buyers, and they got a lot of incentives from the banks and the city. NSP, you may remember those programs, neighborhood stabilization program. That gave them up to 25,000, and you can actually get more by layering it. But long story short, this home, we were only putting it back out there for sale for roughly about $225,000. And this was with the city of Rockdale. The appraiser came back and said it was worth $175,000.
Oh my goodness.
I looked at that report. First thing I noticed, the appraiser was from New Jersey.
Wow.
Okay, all right. First off, you from New Jersey. Okay, now,
Not familiar with our local market.
right.
Difference. Okay.
I said, now you're from New Jersey. Now I'm looking. Oh, not only did you use a distress sale, you used a whole bulk sale. So a person that went to an auction, you use all auction sales as comparables for a home that's been totally renovated. So that was one of those appraisals that I didn't try to provide additional information and have them to make a change. I just had to provide additional information and have that whole appraisal kicked out. And they sent out another appraisal and they upheld a value of 225.
And there we go. And that's the importance of knowing what you're doing,
Oh yeah.
being experienced.
Yes.
Wow. That's wow. I can't believe.
Oh yeah. And so that's one on the seller side, should I say, that I was representing. There's, been other scenarios where I was working with a buyer and still had to assist with rebutting appraisals because sometimes the numbers just don't work. Most time, if you represent a buyer, it's advantageous for the appraiser to come back low because now they're going to get a better
Right.
deal on the property.
Right. Exactly.
I had been working with this buyer for weeks, probably even months, and it was tough for us to find a property. He finally found the one that he loved. It was close to the airport. We were over in the East Point. He worked near the airport, and it was amazing. And being an investor myself, I saw the amount of detail and how much money they put in that property. And so I think we may have needed about 285 at the time was the sales price. And I think they appraised it maybe 250, 260, somewhere in there. But the seller wasn't gonna budge on them, changing the value. And I think this was a conventional loan. If it's a FHA, that appraisal will stick for 6 months. But this was conventional, so he knew the appraisal wouldn't stick. My buyer really wanted to pay the additional, well, he didn't have the additional money to come out of pocket, but he really wanted the home.
Right.
So in this scenario, I actually work with the listing agent because a lot of times they don't know things that they can do when they need to rebuttal an appraisal. So I say, first and foremost, how much money did you put in this property? They put over $100,000 in renovation, but the appraiser did not have that information. So I had them to not only provide that detailed, estimate of the work that had been done. I assisted the listing agent in locating some comparables that would help uphold the $285,000 sales price. He provided that additional information to that appraiser, so instead of kicking that whole appraisal out, that appraiser was actually able to take that additional information and make some changes, and we got to the closing table with the value being upheld at 285. So it was a win-win situation.
Fantastic. I love a good win-win situation every time where everybody's happy at the end of the day. Very good. So let's delve into technology. Okay. Because these days technology affects, every industry. How has technology affected appraisals? Or, I mean, I've heard of desktop appraisals. So please let us know.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I literally I just got back in town last night, but 2 days ago, we were just in San Antonio at the Board of Trustees strategic session about appraisals, and we were talking about the use of technology and how they affected appraisals to give further guidance to the industry on the technology. But when that was initially written, the technology that we were talking about were just AVMs, and that's automated valuation models. You talk about desktop appraisals, things of that nature. But now with the evolution of AI, we have to have a whole nother conversation. So I think the technology with the automated valuation models, they're already there, but you have to be cautious when you're looking at those automated valuation models or AVMs, because if they're pulling data that has been aggregated, you know, from whether it's MLS, one of the other sites, Zillow, Trulia, anything like that, like I know as an agent, sometimes the agent put zero in for square footage because they don't want to be held liable. So when you have the automated valuation models that are aggregating data and coming up with, values based off inaccurate data, then those automated valuation models can be off a little bit. So you have to be a little bit cautious, and it'll never take away the human element.
That's right.
But in some scenarios, it can be advantageous. Now you have scenarios where you have data collectors that are going out, doing all the interior inspection, and they're using some of the AI, different tools and things of that nature. And now they're just giving it to a qualified appraiser to actually do the report. Why is that, beneficial or worth noting? I'm sure we've all seen the reports of people literally whitewashing their homes and doing things because of some of the challenges they've had, with pictures in the home. And they say, well, I don't want to, I don't want to know pretty much I don't want them to know I'm black.
Too personalized, I guess you
Yeah.
say. Yeah, you want them to feel comfortable.
You want, and less is more, what I tell a person with an appraisal. So regardless of, you know, what, type of picture you have, with some of the automated tools they have, it can automatically blur out images, pictures, and things on the wall and just literally take an accurate reading of the size of each room, and the major things that are within the home. And so that can be a plus.
Yeah, that's your plus. And that leads me to I love to always have tips for our audience. When you speak of, personalizing or not personalizing, depersonalizing, what tips, what would you tell our consumers some best practices to do to get ready for an appraisal?
To get ready for an appraisal, if your real estate professional has not already told you things like adding um anything to your or really upgrading your bathrooms and kitchens, that can really add to your value. But just unpersonalizing your home, so less is more.
Right.
Decluttering, taking down certain pictures that maybe in the home, uh the curb appeal, doing your landscaping, doing things like that, just making the home very presentable as well. And then another trick to the trade is, if you've done recent renovations, you're not supposed to necessarily have conversation with the appraiser, but it's okay to leave a folder on the table that may have some information in there about the amount of renovation that you've done to the home, or even have, your real estate professional to forward that information over, because the listing agent is typically in contact with the appraiser. And so sometimes, you can just provide that additional information.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I love that. Brag about the money you've spent on renovating your home and leave the folder there. I love that.
Absolutely.
Wow, there's just been so much here, and I'm probably going to need you to come back because I know there's just so much more deeper.
Anytime. I've enjoyed my time with you, and I appreciate you inviting me on.
So, in the meantime, how can our audiences reach you? be in contact with you?
Well, I am on social media. You can find me on Instagram at be nice, just the letter B, NICE _ the green machine. I am Bilal K. Shareef on Facebook, Bilal K. Shareef on LinkedIn.
Okay, fantastic.
You can also find my business card on bilalkshareef.com.
Thank you so much once again for being here with us. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching today's show. And remember to follow our show on this channel by subscribing below. And leave a comment to let me know your best takeaways from today's episode. Please also share this episode with a friend. I love building a community that's always learning, always growing, and always your universe for all things real estate. Until next time, I'm Stella Harris, and I'll see you soon.